Good Thursday afternoon to you. It's 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're having a good afternoon. Mike Florio and Chris Sims from NBC's Pro Football Talk with their read of the Browns quarterback situation.
I think one of those four guys is going to be gone when they open training camp. You can't go to camp with four potential starting quarterbacks. I think they're going to trade Kenny Pickett. I haven't been told anything. I don't know anything. I never know anything. But just reading between the tea leaves, as a wise man says, Joe Flacco is the fan favorite. They're not going to get rid of Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders. They want to see which one of those guys can become the long-term guy. Pickett was the insurance policy they traded for early on. I think he's the first guy out.
That's right. Well, I mean, like, listen, there's an old saying, right? If you got two quarterbacks, you got none, right? I mean, what is the saying of, like, if you got four quarterbacks,
if you've got five quarterbacks, you're the Browns. I said that. I wrote that this weekend.
Oh, did you?
If you have five quarterbacks, you're the Browns.
Well done. Well done. Yes, I know. I do think this is what Myles Garrett had in mind when he was talking about the future plans of how great the organization was. Be like, we'll just spin a wheel at quarterback, and we'll see. That's what I want at the end of my career.
Myles, we got a new idea for offense. We're going to play four quarterbacks at the same time.
Exactly.
They'll never know who's getting the snap.
If it works, it works. That is pretty good, though. Spin a wheel and decide the quarterback. All right, Harry Douglas on what he believes will be a big factor in the Browns quarterback competition.
I think, number one, can you earn the trust of your teammates? And for Shedeur Sanders and particularly Greeny, I don't think it's about, where he is on the depth chart right now. All these guys, when you get the opportunity to go out there in 7-on-7 and also in 11-on-11 drills and then in one-on-ones, show that you can be counted on, that you can make plays and you can limit your mistakes. And if you do make a mistake, don't remake that mistake again in following practices. So earning the trust of your teammates, grasping the playbook. And I tell you, once you get out there on that football field and you ball out and your teammates see that you're playing well and you're making plays, they're going to talk enough, so much so where the coach is going to have to make that decision to put you as a starting quarterback.
Plenty of Browns quarterback talk ahead. And Albert Breer talking about his perception of where Dylan Gabriel is with the Browns.
Here's a kid who played 6 years in college, who has a historic amount of reps in college, who won at three different schools, that went through and aced the pre-draft process, the meetings, the combine interview, all of that stuff. So that's why you look at it and you say, okay, like, here's a guy who can, at the very least come in and be a functional backup, probably right out of the gate. And, it really makes me think of Kevin Stefanski's own history. He won with Case Keenum in Minnesota. If you remember, they went to an NFC Championship game. And that sort of strikes me as what Dylan Gabriel can be, like that Case Keenum, Chase Daniel. Like, I don't know if Dylan Gabriel will ever be a long-term starter, but right now, I would bet that he has a 10 to 15-year NFL career, even if it's not as a starter, because of all the experience he has, because of the traits that he has as an accurate, efficient quarterback, and because of his makeup, And so I think that's one of those. The ceiling may be low, but the floor is pretty high. And at that position, if you can have a cheap backup for the 4 years that they're on their rookie contract, it's not a bad floor for a player when you're drafting someone in that range.
Interesting perspective for Dylan Gabriel. Tom Pelissero, NFL Network, reporting that the drama with Aaron Rodgers will end soon. Rodgers reportedly will fly to Pittsburgh Friday, tomorrow, to sign his contract, and he will be at the Steelers minicamp, which runs next week. We turn our attention to the Guardians. They're getting ready to wrap up a three-game series with the Yankees in New York. They've split the first two games, a game apiece. Yesterday, Luis Ortiz, another really good start for the Guardians in New York at Yankee Stadium. 5 2/3 innings pitched, 3 hits, 3 walks, 7 strikeouts, no earned runs for Luis Ortiz against a really good Yankees offense. Gets the swinging strikeout there. And Guardians got it going offensively early. Angel Martinez in the first, and that one's not coming back. 2-run homer gave the Guardians a 2-0 lead. Couple batters into it. Still in the first inning, runner at second, Daniel Schneemann. An RBI double to right makes it 3-0 Guardians. In the 8th, Kyle Manzardo, 10th home run of the year. to right center. 4-0 Guardians, and the Guardians win it 4-0. Second night in a row, starting pitching outstanding in Yankee Stadium. Stephen Vogt talked about what Luis Ortiz gave them.
That was outstanding. To navigate that lineup like that, quick outs, obviously a couple walks sprinkled in, but he was able to maneuver around them, got some big punch outs when he needed it, and our defense was outstanding tonight. That's who we are right there. But for Luis to get us through 6 like that, or almost through 6, it was everything we needed tonight.
What has Daniel Schneeman been bringing to your lineup recently?
I mean, Schnee's been swinging the bat well all year. He's been one of our best hitters this year, and not to mention the defense at second base. But what a night for him! 3-hit night. Those aren't easy. Those don't come often. Schnee's been a huge part of what we've done so far this year.
How much progress have you seen from Ortiz, just even from when you first laid eyes on him in spring training?
Yeah, a lot. I mean, Carl and the pitching team have done a great job, but Louis has been putting in the work. We talk about all the time, our guys are learning how to do this every 5 days. They're learning how to build upon starts, and Louis has been one of our more consistent guys, and we just continue to see growth and making pitches when he needs to. It's been a lot of fun.
Guardians will wrap up the series, try to take 2 out of 3 against the Yankees tonight. Slade Ciccone against Max Fried for the Yankees, 7 o'clock. Then they come home for a 3-game series this weekend with the Astros. Zack Meisel will be along a little bit later to talk Guardians. ESPN's national NBA analyst Brian Windhorst with his thoughts on if the Cavs could potentially move one of the core 4 this offseason.
The interesting thing about the Cavs is a year ago, there was some belief that Darius Garland may want to get traded. That was definitely out there, that if Donovan extended his contract, that maybe Darius would want to get traded. And the message that was very hard out there, Kobe was on the record, I'm pretty sure, even saying, we're not trading Darius Garland. A year later, I think there's some belief that Darius Garland might be available under the right circumstances, and I don't think Darius Garland wants to go anywhere. Darius is very happy with how things have developed in Cleveland, and he really likes it. He likes the role that he's got. But I think the Cavs are listening and open-minded.
And if they get the right offer, they should probably move one of the core 4. Got to do something to get over that hump in the playoffs. All right, we're going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report, up first. We're talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. Browns are first up on Sports4CLE. Defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz talking about Ronnie Hickman and what he needs to see from him this season.
Yeah, he's always been a ball hawk. Last year, there was some injuries, things that kept him from being on the field. This is a really big season. He's in his 3rd year. He should really hit his stride for us. We're surrounding him with some veteran players. Brought Rayshon in, brought Casey in. Have Grant returning. We're a safety-heavy team. We run a lot of 3-safety system, but we need Ronnie to really bring it all together. Showed really good flashes as a rookie. And he played well when he was on the field last year, but we just need him on the field a little bit more. He's a little bit bigger now. I don't know if you guys notice him. Physical stature, he's a little bit more, and he's still moving just as well.
With that, let's welcome in Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. Fred, I play that to tee up. I know you wrote an article of Jim Schwartz yesterday kind of talking about the defense and what they need to get back to where they were a couple of years ago?
Yeah, that's what he started off and he talked about. He was asked, we all know in 23 the Browns were number one ranked statistically. Browns were 11-6. Everybody expected the defense to be as good, if not better, in 2024, and we know they slipped back from first to 19th and dropped way off in the rushing defense. And so what's it going to take? Well, they used their top two picks on Mason Graham and Carson Schlesinger. So that kind of tells you, what they think there up the middle. But he honed in on getting off the field on third down, and he talked about takeaways. I wrote about both of those, and he kind of reinforced that with his statement, is that the takeaways, in 2023, the Browns offense turned the ball over like 37 times, but the defense took it away 28. And so that really, helped them quite a bit, even though they were still in the negative. Last year, the offense turned the ball over 34 times, but the defense only took it away 12 times. 4 interceptions and 8 fumble recoveries. That's just not going to get it done, especially when the offense was giving it away as much. That's, that many more times on the field. That's many times that you're not getting the defense off. So I think the third down and the takeaways, sometimes it's just the way the ball bounces, but they're safeties. They signed Juan Thornhill to be a ball hawk. That's what he had been in Kansas City. He had no interceptions in his career with the Browns. He did have some injuries, but they let him go. And Schwartz, just that clip you played, he answered the question, who's going to be the free safety? Because they didn't address it in the offseason. They didn't draft a safety, and they didn't sign one in free agency, at least a top end one, until the draft was over. They went out and got 2 veterans, DeMonte Casey and Rayshawn Jenkins. So that shows you that they really value or think Hickman's ready to take off in his third year undrafted rookie free agent out of Ohio State.
So you've been out at all the OTAs that are available that you can go out to for the media. What are your takeaways from this week's OTAs a couple days ago?
Well, a lot of things I've talked about with you before is that little concerned about the wide receiver room. Jerry Jeudy's there, and there's a big drop-off. In fact, yesterday, Cedric Tillman and Michael Woods didn't practice for whatever reason. David Bell's still coming off that hip. So you had Jamari Thrash really lined up, as a starter at this point in the offseason. Deontay Johnson has not been there, at least on the open days we've been there. I have heard that he was in the earlier portion, but they're really counting on Cedric Tillman to step right in, and that's where I just think a real key factor is Deontay Johnson. I mean, he's had some trouble in the past, at least last year. You really think that they need him to come through, just sheer numbers. So wide receivers, one that stands out to me. A lot of rookies and undrafted guys and guys that have been down the depth chart. Other than that, DeJuan Jones, I mean, he looks the part now. I think we're going to talk about him a little later. But Joe Flacco right now, looks the best at the quarterbacks. Everybody wants to talk about the quarterbacks, in my opinion. I think the Browns are at a crossroads. I think with the schedule, the first 6 games, very tough on paper. In fact, I think the records from last year are something like, I can't remember right off top. It was like 41 and 31 or something like that. Very, very good records. And you would feel like he would be your best shot, to navigate the beginning. But then again, you have to at some point decide if you like Kenny Pickett enough to play him and the 2 rookies. So are you playing to win, or are you playing, to look at the other quarterbacks. So that to me is the biggest question I think they need to decide between now and, early in training camp.
What are Browns fans are asking this all the time? What are realistic expectations for them for that team? And how do you sell to a guy like Joel Bitonio that's come back, or anybody on the offensive line that has a year or two left? Hey, we got to figure out our quarterback situation. We're not, you got to play the guys that are give you the best opportunity to win, at least initially, don't you?
Yeah, that's what I said. I think that it makes sense to me. I know Pickett kind of has the inside track, at least, in what we're seeing. But I think Joe Flacco right now has the respect because he's done it here with the Browns, even though he didn't do that great with the Colts last year. To start the season, you'd feel a lot more comfortable. And that's why I think the defense is so important to get that right and get back, where you have a defense that can shut down an opponent. But that running game, the renewed ramping back up the running game and the commitment to Quinshon Judkins and Dylan Sampson in the draft, and then the wide zone scheme. So if you really commit to running the ball and are effective with that offensive line coming back to that scheme, I think it'll make whatever quarterback you decide on look a lot better. But yeah, I mean, it's a tightrope because Myles Garrett obviously signed the big contract, but that was a big sticking point with him that they're not close to winning. Joe Bitonio came back. So I don't think you can throw in the towel. That's why, to me, it kind of makes sense in one regard to go with Flacco and then turn it over to the young guys if things don't go well early. But if you throw out a rookie quarterback before they're ready, you're asking for disaster, in my opinion. And I don't know. Kenny Pickett's kind of in that, do you really want to see? And maybe he does, have a year comparable to Sam Darnold where you go, oh, wow, this guy really looks good. Well, he's in the last year of a contract of $2.6 million. If he has a great year, you probably won't be able to get him back. And then you didn't accomplish anything, this season. So there's a lot of variables that come into this whole equation.
Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. Now I'm going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll talk a little bit more about Kenny Pickett and DeJuan Jones. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
At the Ohio Lottery, we make Keno fun your way. So go on, pick your wager. Will it be $1, $2, $10, or more? Your call. Then it's as easy as picking up to 10 numbers. Use any inspiration you like. You can even tag on the booster for a chance to boost your winnings up to 10 times. Every few minutes across Ohio, 20 out of 80 possible numbers are drawn. And if enough of yours match, you win. Keno is always fun your way.
We continue talking Browns with Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. Offensive coordinator Tommy Rees talking about DeJuan Jones.
Yeah, DeJuan's been really intentional in what he's doing and accountable to what we're asking him to do. Coach Bloom, Coach Ben Wilkerson and Sanders, those guys have all done a really nice job of continuing to work on him fundamentally. And look, playing both sides of the line takes some time and development, but he's bought in and doing the things we're asking him to do.
Fred, I know you were out there and got a chance to talk to DeJuan Jones as well. Take us through kind of what you learned from talking to DeJuan.
I think the biggest thing is for him being healthy and being on the field. Both last 2 years, he finished seasons on the injured list, and he looks, he's a big man, obviously. I have a clip of him playing left tackle in front of Dylan Gabriel, and somebody made a comment to me on my timeline that they would bet their dollars to donuts that Gabriel's going to hit him in the back of the helmet sometime between now and training camp, or and it looks like there's not a lot of room to get around him, but he's repositioned, or whatever the right word is, reproportioned his weight and his body. he looks a lot, leaner and better shape. He said overall he lost about 20 pounds, but a lot of that was fat that he's now converted into lean muscle mass, and so I think if he can maintain that better physical shape and he can stay on the field, it bodes well long term. I think that if he can be the answer long term at left tackle, I think if he could stay on the field this year and prove that, that's one less top of the draft positions they need to look at for the future. But even if he struggles either side, even if they feel that left tackle or right tackle, that it bodes well for the future. So I think that's a positive all the way around. That he said that he'd rather play right tackle, but he understands and he's willing to make a full grown commitment to left tackle. And obviously, in the NFL, left tackles pay even bigger than the right tackles in most situations. So I think it bodes well. So far, so good. He's just got to be able to stay on the field, I think. I think in the little limited we've seen him, he's done pretty well, especially only 3 starts last year at left tackle. And it made it where they felt like they didn't need to really address that going forward with a rookie. They brought in Cornelius Lucas, who's a veteran swing left and right tackle. So, we'll see. But, I think they have high hopes for him.
Yeah, I mean, and Tommy Rees kind of alluded to it. He's kind of committed to having the type of body composition that they want him to, which in theory would help him stay on the field. We'll see. You talked about Kenny Pickett, and these are, take a look at his career numbers. It's interesting. So he's had 25 starts in the NFL. He's 15-10. Of those 15 wins, 6 of them are fourth quarter comeback wins. And the numbers aren't great: 15 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. But it's interesting. He played, those numbers come with the Steelers, and people are going to say the Steelers didn't have a lot of great skill position guys. You're talking Najee Harris and George Pickens, and I would say that's comparable to Jerry Jeudy and whatever rookie, Quinshawn Junkins. So I guess the question is, what sense do you get about Kenny Pickett and kind of where he fits into this quarterback scheme?
Yeah, well, that's the unknown. I mean, my impression early in OTAs and what I've seen him, he seems to be, very astute in trying to take care of the ball. And you can see with his career, only 14 interceptions. I've seen that he checks down a lot and takes the easy completion, which I think probably bodes well with Kevin Stefanski and why they like him, not to force it into a crowd and turn the ball over. I mean, 23 interceptions last year, led the NFL. The Browns, that was a disaster. And we said it, if they just had adequate quarterback play and great defense, they could have won several more games, especially early in the season. That's when the season went awry, 1-6 at the beginning when they had abysmal quarterback play. So I think that's what intrigued them about Pickett, is that he looks pretty well suited for this offense, not try to force it, take the check down to the running back or the tight end. And in the Steelers, the recipe was great defense, and then they managed an offense, and he had, the 6 comeback wins. That was one of my biggest criticisms with Baker Mayfield early in his career. It seemed like he never, when they had the chance, led the Browns down for a game-winning drive on the last possession. Now he's kind of, rectified it, but he didn't do that too much until maybe at the end with the Browns. And so, that is a good characteristic. But if they're going to go that recipe, really the defense needs to be right back where it was in 2023. And then I think they can win games with a strong running game, strong up front with the offensive line, and a quarterback like Pickett that's not going to turn the ball over. It's going to play it closer to the vest.
Wouldn't you think that's kind of an important thing given this offense? And I mean, you've got Jerry Jeudy, I guess David Njoku. Other than that, again, there's a lot of question marks. Don't put the defense in a bad spot, I guess, is the best way to win.
Yeah, going back to last year, I think the defense in those first 7 games, they played well enough to win in maybe 3, maybe 4 of those games, but the offense couldn't score over 15 points, and when you're scoring that low of amount, you're putting a lot of pressure on the defense. You turn the ball over, and I think then after a 1-6 start, it kind of affected the defense as well, and they started struggling. So, yeah, I think that's the recipe, and you can see with, Mason Graham, Schlesinger. We'll see when they get on the field, but if those 2 guys can shore up the area they felt they really need to address, the pass rush, the inside rush, kind of fill in the JOK role and a sideline to sideline linebacker, I think that the defense, there's no reason they cannot get back, to where they were. And then there's your recipe: running game, not turn the ball over, play it close, make the play when need be.
So we've kind of touched around it as well. Wide receivers, a lot of question marks. Cedric Tillman played well, but he did miss the final 6 games of last year with that concussion. New offensive coordinator Tommy Rees, his thoughts on Tillman.
Yeah, Ced's done a nice job. He's a great threat for us. That middle part of the year where he really started taking off, kind of see him pick up where he was. And, we have continued to develop Ced in his role, and he provides, size and strength and athleticism, something that is really critical both inside and out, playing wide out. I think he has some flex there. So continue to develop Ced's game and get the most out of him.
Fred, I'm with you. You're relying on Cedric Tillman, who missed the final 6 games and really hasn't done it. Deontay Johnson kind of been all over the place the last year at least. And after that, those are the 2 guys other than Jerry Jeudy who you feel most comfortable with. Then you're going way off the board.
Yeah, last year about this time, we felt like Amari Cooper was the only guy you could really count on. They traded for Jeudy, and they had high hopes for him and signed him to a big contract, and it paid off so far. It looks like he had the breakout year. You moved on from Cooper. All the moves have been great. But when you look at from last year even, Elijah Moore wasn't great, but he had 61 receptions, and you let him walk. So you're really counting on Cedric Tillman. I spent some time, I was at an event with Cedric and got to talk to him quite a bit one-on-one. And he really wants to be great. And he knows, the concussion situation the last 2 years. And that's a big issue. But that little stretch, I was wondering about him. He did virtually nothing when Deshaun Watson was the quarterback the first 7 games. When he got hurt in that 7th game, I think DTR came in. Immediately, Tillman had like 7, 8 targets and really looked like a wide receiver. And then Jameis Winston took over, and he really had 3 great games. He averaged like over 7, 8 catches, close to 100 yards, 3 touchdowns, and then he got hurt. And so that's the biggest deficit. And so you really hope he has the breakout. But if Jeudy was dinged up a little and he's a slight type player, or Tillman again, you really have very little. Like you said, you have a weapon in Jeudy and Njoku, but beyond that, it's unproven. That's why I think Deontay Johnson is such a wild card. He has really been a great receiver. I don't know what happened last year, but you would think he's in the last chance situation for his career. He signed a 1 year at the minimum, and you would think he'd be out there doing everything he can to earn. It's a prime opportunity for him with the Browns to be the number 2 or at worst the number 3 receiver. So we'll see how it goes. Next week he'll be in and we'll get a look at him for the first time. But yeah, I still think they need a little bit more proven at the wide receiver position. I don't know what's left. Amari Cooper's still available, Keenan Allen, Gabe Davis, but I don't know. I don't know if they'll just go with what they have. and make a decision at training camp or going into the season. But a lot of question marks at wide receiver.
Agree with you wholeheartedly. Fred Greetham, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Fred.
Always great to be back with you.
Fred Greetham, make sure you check him out. He is the senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. Always a very good and insightful Browns coverage. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns. Spencer German up next. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Let's welcome in Spencer German from 92.3 The Fan, the Browns on SI, and the Locked On Browns podcast. Spencer, takeaways from OTAs. You were out there. What did you walk away thinking?
Yeah, I think obviously with the quarterback competition is the headline everyone wants to know about. I know that everyone's watching that regularly on a day-to-day basis, and I like the Shedeur. Listen, I want to be clear. Shedeur Sanders looked really good in the 11-on-11 reps he got. He kind of started with he fell down on a boot play, and it was kind of an awkward way to start the session. But then he only got better from there. He completed a couple really good passes. One that was like a centimeter away from being a touchdown to the back of the end zone. That was a really good throw. And as I was watching this unfold, though, I was reminded just by, yet again, how the Browns kind of handled the reps that day. And it was still a lot of Kenny Pickett. It was Dylan Gabriel sort of next in line with 11-on-11s, and Flacco took a little bit less. But I just think that speaks to, Flacco doesn't need the reps this time of year. He knows the offense. He knows what he's doing. They know what to expect from Joe Flacco. So it was like one of those step in the right direction for Shedeur because he's involved in drills that we hadn't seen yet, but still sort of a reminder that I just think he has a long way to go to be the starter day one. I don't envision that happening, and I think the Browns are sort of slow playing it that way. I don't think they want to put him out there week one necessarily. I think they want him to get coached up. Everywhere he goes, he is sort of he is right next to or with Tommy Rees and Bill Musgrave, just kind of picking their brains and getting coached up, and it's good to see. But I think it would be pretty ambitious to think that he's going to be the starter week one, even though I think he's showing signs of progress, and that's only going to continue over the next month or so. A couple other small things, I think Quinshon Judkins continues to look really good. He had a really nice cut on this one play, dipped in and then bounced back outside and broke it for a pretty big gain and a first down. That was impressive. I think Carson Schlesinger, I'm excited to see him in pads because you can tell his ranginess is there and his quick decision-making is there. And I thought the quarterbacks overall looked worse this week than they did the week before. And that's sort of that old saying of, the defense being ahead of the offense, especially this time of year. So I'm not surprised by that. But yeah, I think it was another solid week overall. And I'm mostly looking forward to another phase where we get a little bit more intensity next week at a mandatory minicamp and everybody being there, including some of these top names like Myles Garrett and Joel Bitonio and et cetera, to see what this thing looks like as a full package rather than just some of the parts and pieces.
So Jerry Jeudy, by all accounts, has been looking really good, actually. You wrote an article that he appears to have some chemistry with one of the quarterbacks in particular.
Yeah, I think Jerry is already showing, last year was a lot about getting acclimated, right? He had been traded for. He was one of the big moves they made last offseason. He was still technically at that time behind Amari Cooper on the depth chart, and so he was kind of trying to find his role. I think this year he already looks like he's so comfortable, and he's just going out there making plays. Quarterbacks are finding him. He's the go-to target. Him and Joe Flacco are very much on the same page, and I know that's who you're alluding to here because he talked about last week how him and Joe are locker mates. They're right next to each other, and they're having different conversations that aren't always football related. They're hitting it off. They're having a lot of fun, and they're picking each other's brain on different things, and that stuff's important. I think this time of year, those are the types of things that sort of foster a good chemistry on the field when you get to training camp, when you get to the regular season. And so it was good to hear him talk about that. It's good to hear just this sort of tone or way about him where he just seems like he is totally locked in and focused. And it's good to see that he has that chemistry already with Joe Flacco, which is part of the reason why, like, I'm fascinated to see how the quarterback competition shakes out as much as anybody, because, you know, like that type of stuff matters. And Flacco's ability to, I think, raise others up is something to keep an eye on, and an important piece of this equation when it comes to the quarterback competition.
Another article that you wrote, Kevin Stefanski dropping a bold claim about one of their sleeper weapons. Matter of fact, he might be stealth because media hasn't seen him yet.
Yeah, he seemed, he did an interview with 92 to the Fan, I know, with the station I work at, and he talked about the wide receiver room and how it seems like they are hoping Deontay Johnson is a key part of what they want to do offensively. But I find it interesting he hasn't been there for either of these OTA sessions. And listen, I'm somebody who, I'm a pretty empathetic person, so admittedly, so I can give people the benefit of the doubt, especially on a program or a time of year where it's voluntary. Like, stuff happens. Maybe he has something going on he couldn't get out of. Maybe he had a prior engagement that was important to him that he had to be at. So I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt that, like, okay, he wasn't here and maybe he had something going on. But I kind of figured, like, okay, he wasn't there last week. It would be like a one-off, and then he'd be there this week. But for him not to be there again, you know, it raises your eyebrows a little bit, because I think with all these guys who aren't in attendance, like, context matters. Myles Garrett is a bona fide Hall of Famer, and by all accounts, when the season rolls around, you know what you're getting from Myles Garrett. He shows up just about every single week. He's part of the opposing team's game plan every single week. They're trying to scheme around him every single week. Like, we know what you're going to get from Myles Garrett. Him not being here, not a big deal to me. Joe Bitonio, he's a seasoned veteran in this league. Him not being out there in the field for OTAs, it doesn't bother me. Like, you know what you're going to get from Joe Bitonio. He's steady as they come. Deontay Johnson, on the other hand, he's basically fighting for his NFL life. Like, this could be his last stint, his last chance to sort of revive his NFL career, land on his feet somewhere. And so for him not to be there 2 straight weeks, even in a voluntary program, just sort of catches my attention, because it makes me wonder, like, is he even going to make this roster at this point if he's not showing up to, like, the basic stuff where, and Kevin Stefanski said it, like, this time of year is more so about quarterbacks getting on the same page with receivers, learning the playbook, understanding different things they're trying to do and who they are as an offense and as a team. You know, the corners and those guys kind of getting acclimated and you know, getting their coverages down and communicating. That's the stuff that's important this time of year. And so I would just think he'd want to be here as a player who may or may not be, you know, playing for his career here with the Cleveland Browns. So it's gotten to a point where it's a little bit of a red flag for me. Maybe it means nothing. Maybe it means something. But I was surprised to not see him out there for the 2nd straight week.
Yeah, I mean, again, he has a real opportunity here to carve out a role, a significant role in an offense. So I'm with you. I want to hear why he wasn't there. If there's a good reason for it, okay. If not, it's a huge red flag. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Spencer German and I can step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll hear from Jim Schwartz. We'll talk a little bit about Myles Garrett. Sports4CLE. Be right back. Stay with us.
At the Ohio Lottery, we make Keno fun your way. So go on, pick your wager. Will it be $1, $2, $10, or more? Your call. Then it's as easy as picking up to 10 numbers. Use any inspiration you like. You can even tag on the booster for a chance to boost your winnings up to 10 times. Every few minutes across Ohio, 20 out of 80 possible numbers are drawn. And if enough of yours match, you win. Keno is always fun your way.
We continue talking Browns with Spencer German from 92.3 The Fan. Jim Schwartz, defensive coordinator, asked what his expectations are for Myles Garrett this season based on the big contract Myles signed.
I really think Myles is going to have the best season of his career, and has to, right? You know, I mean, with, you know, I've told him before, you know, what's that Spider-Man quote? With great power comes great responsibility, right? You know, and that's with the big contract, with the notoriety that came along with that, and you know, with the process that took to get him to that point. There also comes, there's always pressure in this league, but probably a little bit more so. And I think that brings out the best in players.
Spencer, I know you wrote an article about Jim Schwartz saying that with Miles. Take us through that and kind of your thoughts there.
Yeah, listen, I thought it was well said by Jim Schwartz, and what I think is interesting about this idea of Miles with the contract, and I guess the concept of the Spider-Man quote, right? Like, with great power comes great responsibility. I think people have kind of missed the mark on using that line when it applies to Miles. I think people have tried to say, well, hey, now that he's getting paid more, he needs to be more of a leader. And I think it's the opposite. I think it's what Jim Schwartz is alluding to more. I think it's more about like, hey, he got paid the money because he's a really good player. He's a bona fide Hall of Famer, and he's expected to show up on Sundays. And so Jim Schwartz saying, listen, now that you got paid, we know you're great, but now you got to be even better. I think that's where we should be directing our attention when it comes to like what the contract should mean for Miles. It should be about, hey, can you take your game up a notch? Can you be the NFL sack king in a season? Can you maybe win another defensive player of the year? Are you, showing up even more in some of the tight moments of games where at times people have asked, like, where's Miles on that play, or where's Miles in this moment? Like, those are the types of things you're looking for. You can generally expect that Myles Garrett is going to give you his all, that he's going to put up big numbers. He is a tremendous generational player, and so I have no doubts he's going to be great again next year. But for him to sort of set that bar at, listen, you got all this money, you got paid, now you got to take it up a notch, I thought was interesting. And again, I think we've missed the mark a little bit on, like, the leadership thing isn't as important to me, because I get it. Like, people want the highest paid players, or assume the highest paid players are going to be the biggest leaders. But Miles has just never been that guy. I think to a point, Miles is always going to be a little bit of a leader because he's respected in that locker room because of the talent that he is. And when he speaks, others are just naturally going to listen. But he's never going to be like the rah-rah guy. I don't think he has to be the rah-rah guy. And so I think for me, what Jim Schwartz said was right on point. The idea that, like, the leadership part of it is one thing, and I don't necessarily think I don't put a ton of stock in that. But the idea that, like, okay, you got paid, now what? I think it applies more to just like what he does on the field. And we know he's going to be great, but can he turn his game up a notch? Jim Schwartz apparently thinks he can.
So, also wrote this from the Locked On Browns podcast that shows interesting topic. Kevin Stefanski's overhauled offense. Do you think it provides hope for the Browns?
I do. And the premise of that segment was I used some of the quotes from Joel Bitonio the other day at the Browns Foundation golf tournament, where he flat out said, we're going back to 2020, 2021. Like, what the offense looked like back then is more of what you're going to see, more of what you're going to get. And I like that. It's not a surprise. Like, I know, Dave, like, you and I have talked about that. I've talked about that with other people. I've talked about that on the podcast. We all kind of knew that was where it was headed. But to hear somebody say it, I think was huge. And I do think that should provide some hope for a season that most people assume is just like over before it even started, right? And I know, like, the win total in Vegas is 5.5. I've said all along, like, if they can get competent offense. The offense was the problem last year. The defense, by and large, I didn't expect them to be as dominant as 2023, because defenses year to year can just be so different. It's kind of like bullpens in baseball in that way. And so, like, did they probably take a step back? Yeah. But I also think, like, you go back and watch some of those games, they were the reason the Browns were, like, down a single possession sometimes, like, in the second half, because they had kept them in it despite having short fields to work with and all these different things. The offense was just so bad. And so if you go back to the basics here of Kevin Stefanski's system, if you feel like with the running back tandem you've created with Quinshon Judkins and Dylan Sampson, that they are, that they can sort of become that 1-2 punch that you used to have with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. And you have a quarterback that can at least run the offense effectively without turning the ball over so much. You're bound to see some an uptick for this team just in general from last season. It's not, I don't expect it to be quite as bad. So I do think there's a little bit of room for hope. I'm not saying I'm going to sit here and predict the Browns to be a playoff team. I'm not saying I'm going to predict them to be a Super Bowl team at all. But I do think, like, if you're looking for some reason for optimism this season, going back to Stefanski's offense and the way guys are talking about, like, this is our identity and we think getting back to this is going to help us, and understanding what went wrong last year, I think there's reason to believe that maybe people have written this team off as just being completely terrible again. And I think there's something there that can at least sell you on the idea that, like, they might not be great, but they're not going to be necessarily as bad as they were last season. And frankly, there's probably a number of people's jobs that depend on not being as bad as last year.
The thing that's interesting to me is the guys that are most excited about that offense and going back to it seem to be the offensive linemen, which should be that should be a really good thing for the run game, is because they want to get back to that. Another topic I'm curious from Locked On Browns, is Jimmy Haslam misunderstood?
So the Jimmy Haslam conversation is always such a loaded one, and there's so many different angles to this, right? Like, I get where the results speak for themselves, right? Like, the people are going to rip on him for the Johnny Manziel thing years ago. People are he's going to have to wear the Deshaun Watson decision for years to come, and that's going to go down as the worst trade in NFL history until the next worst trade in NFL history. And I understand why those complicate these things, because it looks like an owner who's botched more things than he's done right. But my argument was that, like, there was an Athletic article that was put out that was basically like, it was titled something along the lines of, like, how much does each NFL owner want to win? And then they kind of ranked the teams based on that. And it felt more like it was just like a ranking of the teams draped in, how do we feel about the owners? And like the paragraph on the Browns, like, cited the Deshaun Watson decision. And my biggest thing is this: like, anybody can rip that trade up and down for years to come and say they should have never done it. And I'll never dispute that. Like, they probably shouldn't have done it in the grand scheme of things. But if the idea of this article was to sort of figure out, like, which owners are committed to winning, I think the Deshaun Watson thing speaks more to an owner who wants to win than doesn't. Like, the willingness to go make that trade, that blockbuster deal, spoke to a team that was like, hey, we need a quarterback. We got to get this thing figured out. Let's go get this guy that at one point was top 5 in the league, even though there was a lot of risk involved with it. And it clearly backfired. It wasn't the right decision. But if you're trying to tell me, like, or talk to me about owners who want to win, I think the Haslams have shown in recent years that they are willing to do whatever it takes to try to make that happen, whether it's giving up a bunch of draft capital to get a quarterback that they think is going to be it, or whether it's being willing to commit $230 million fully guaranteed to a player with those controversies because you want to get the deal done and push it across the finish line. So, and I think even something like the stadium conversation speaks to that, right? Like, I know that's a very controversial topic right now, but their willingness as owners to keep the team in town, their willingness to, invest in something that they think is great for Northeast Ohio. Like, I think all those things speak to an owner who's taken this seriously at this point. And also the fact that Kevin Stefanski and Angie Bear are still here, because they could have been fired at the end of last season. But Jimmy Haslam told everybody he could last year, like, they're not going anywhere. We trust these guys. And then that bared itself out in the offseason where they kept them and they're standing by them. And I think he has learned to trust the people he's put into power now. So, listen, it's a complicated subject, and I get that, like, Jimmy Haslam doesn't need people to defend him. He's had plenty of things that they've messed up as owners as owners of this team. But I do think recent history suggests, like, he's learned a lot, and that even though they took the big swing on Deshaun, that was in the grand scheme of things, that was a move directed towards, let's go win, let's go try to get better and figure out this position that's eluded us for decades. And I can't blame the Browns or Jimmy Haslam in this ownership group for that, at least, even if it was the wrong decision, looking back on it, hindsight being 2020.
Yeah, couldn't agree with you more. And I got to run, but here's the other thing. If you look at real dollars spent year to year, he spends $90 to $100 million more because all of those renegotiations, he's willing to write the check. So he does want to win, and he has had some questionable decisions, hasn't figured out how to win yet, but I don't question his desire. Everything that he does is to try to win a Super Bowl. I truly believe that. Spencer, great stuff as always. Appreciate it, man. Have a good one.
Always a pleasure, Dave. Hopefully we'll talk again next week, man. Thanks.
Sounds good. Spencer German, 92.3 The Fan, as well as the Locked On Browns podcast. Check them out. Always really good stuff. We're going to turn our attention to the Guardians. Zack Meisel from The Athletic. Straight ahead. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We turn our attention to the Cleveland Guardians, getting ready to finish up a 3-game series in New York against the Yankees. They've split the first 2, and it's been 3 really good starts in a row for starting pitching. Last night, Luis Ortiz got the win. Take a look at Ortiz's last 7 starts for the Guardians. 39 in the third innings, 40 strikeouts, a 2.77 earned run average, walks and hits per innings pitched 1.3 over his last 7 starts. Let's welcome in Zack Meisel from the Athletic Guardians beat reporter. Zack, man, what about Ortiz? Again, a younger guy. You don't tend to think of him in terms of being a younger pitcher, but he's hitting a stride.
Yeah, this is a guy, the Guardians traded for him over the winter, and it's that old tale, right? When Cleveland targets a pitcher, whether a trade, free agent signing, whatever it is, the draft, there's something that they like, and they're usually pretty good over the years at taking that trait or whatever that ingredient is and making sure that they're getting the most out of a pitcher. And Ortiz had a good breakout year last year for the Pirates, and so you're wondering, he was already good. They see something in him that they like, and it's a work in progress, right? He had a rough spring, rough early start to the year. You threw up his stats, his last 7 starts. His last 5 starts, the ERA is 2.28. So to me, this looks like a guy who's just getting better and better. And, I think we forget, like, he's 26 years old. That doesn't mean he's a finished product. Like, there is still development left there. There are ways he can get better, and I think he's under the right tutelage to do that.
So you wrote an article about kind of the pitching factory that the Guardians have had, and they're close to reassembling another dominant starting pitching rotation. Take us through that article and kind of what you're thinking with that.
Yeah, I mean, Dave, you mentioned the last 3 starts, and I think that's been kind of a microcosm for how this team probably has to play. This is not Kluber and Carrasco and Salazar and Clevenger and like those rotations that were really historically great. But it's been rough. Last year, their rotation was a huge weakness, and part of that was injury related. You lost Shane Bieber after 2 starts, but you looked up in the postseason, and their rotation was 2 guys they acquired mid-season coming off injuries in Matthew Boyd and Alex Cobb, and then Tanner Bybee, and Bybee by the end of it was starting on short rest. So they were desperate, and I think the key for them this season is to not have to play that way. You don't want to have to lean too heavily on Clase and Cade Smith and Hunter Gaddis. Clearly, the lineup is an area of the roster that is going to need to undergo some transition here to some young guys or new guys over time. So it's important that the rotation is reliable, that it's steady. And the last 3 starts, I mean, Gavin Williams takes a no-hitter into the 6th inning on Sunday. Tanner Bybee made 2 mistakes very late in that game on Tuesday. Otherwise, he was dominating the Yankees. And then Ortiz, 5 2/3 scoreless at Yankee Stadium last night. So you see the recipe. I think for this team to get where they want to go, it's got to be the rotation. It's got to be a resurgence of that pitching factory. And I think we see, especially with those 3 guys, they have the stuff, and it's just a matter of being consistent with it. And, lately, the last few weeks, they have been.
It's kind of interesting, too. When you think about Bybee and Ortiz in particular, Yankee Stadium against a team that's playing as well as the Yankees are, and offensively, that's a pretty good team. You're not going to see many better. That's kind of playoff-type intensity there.
Yeah, 100%. I think the key, too, is just keep them in the ballpark. Tanner Bybee did that so well for 6 innings and just made 2 mistakes in the 7th, and they were popped 2 solo home runs, and that was it, right? But you saw Ortiz he got a ton of ground balls, he racked up strikeouts. That's how you want to pitch that team, especially in that stadium where like any left-handed hitter can just yank one into the seats 315 feet down the right field line. So yeah, I think again, like you see the stuff is there. I mean, you see it with Gavin Williams. It's been like tormenting for a couple of years now because you see him throw 99 and he's got a great curveball and he's just trying to figure everything out. And I think it's important to be patient and remember that this takes time. You see it with Ortiz. Tanner Bybee is still going through some ups and downs, but you think about if those three guys can get on track and build off of what they've done lately, and then there's another guy coming back in a few weeks who certainly has a track record. Like all of a sudden, you're envisioning what could be a really good rotation and probably the key to this team's success.
Well, you mentioned, and I think you're referring to Shane Bieber. So he'll start tomorrow, his second rehab appearance, or he'll pitch tomorrow in Akron. What can you realistically hope to see from Bieber, and how far away do you think he is from helping at the major league level?
Yeah, so his assignment Friday night is 3 innings, about 50 pitches. And then he'll keep building on that. So he has a 30-day rehab window that started at the end of May. So that takes him through the end of June at maximum. So I would say he'll probably be back in about 3 to 4 weeks. You're looking at like the last week of June, first week of July. And that's obviously predicated on him remaining healthy and not having setbacks and everything feeling good. And they're going to be careful with that too. They're not going to rush him back, but you think about it. And if he's back, let's say the first week of July, I mean, you're getting 3 months out of Shane Bieber, and you don't want to place too high of expectations given that he'll have gone 15 months between big league starts, but I don't know. I've never seen Shane Bieber pitch at any level that wasn't a really good major leaguer, right? We have no evidence of that. So it's hard to temper your expectations. Plus, we just saw Matthew Boyd last season come back in August off Tommy John surgery, and he was dynamite. The best he's ever pitched, and he's carried that over into this season with the Cubs. So I don't know. You want to have patience and say like, hey man, just knock the rust off, no pressure. But at the other side, it's like, I don't know, kind of feel like he could go back to being the ace, or at least someone you can count on. And if you can get that, then again, this rotation's in good shape.
Yeah, and you don't. Once he gets to the point where you think he's himself or close to himself, he doesn't need to prove it at AAA. You just need to see that he's healthy and then bounce back the way you want to see him, and not putting him at any risk. I'm curious as all get out. You also wrote an article about Jose Ramirez, and Guardians fans are coming to expect it. Need a stolen base, he'll get it. Need a home run, he'll hit it. Need him to hit the other way. He's kind of the best kept secret in baseball, is the point of your article. Take us through that.
Yeah, to me, he's 32. He'll be 33 in September, and I've seen no signs of him slowing down. And I mean, he just finished a career high 21 game hitting streak. He didn't get a hit last Friday night, and all he's done since is hit and steal bases and draw walks. And he's having another great, well-rounded year, except better. I don't think he's going to go 40-40 like he almost did last season. Well, really, he almost had 40-40-40 if you include doubles, but he'll probably get to 40 doubles again. He'll probably get to 40 stolen bases again. He'll probably get to 25-30 home runs, and he's hitting like 327 or something, which would be the highest of his career. So I think the skills that make him great, the baseball instincts, you see it on the base paths. He's not fast by any means, but he's always stealing bases, taking an extra base. You see the helmet flying off, and like that awareness at the plate. Like he knows the strike zone. He knows what pitch you're going to try to throw to get him out, to get him to chase. And I think we've seen him be a little patient, draw some more walks, hit some singles, and not try to just lift the whole lineup on his back. He can do that anyway. You're just seeing a well-rounded player who is 32 going on 33 and really going on, the backside of his Hall of Fame career. I don't. That's the part that I don't know if people quite recognize. I think in Cleveland they do. But this is a guy who's, he's probably in the 2027 or 2028 season, he's going to get to 350 home runs and 350 stolen bases. There's only one other player in Major League history who's in that club, Barry Bonds. That's it. So I just, you can find any stat you want. The guy's going to lead the franchise in just about everything when it's all said and done. And I maybe it's shame on me. Like, maybe I haven't even quite comprehended or wrapped my head around how he's done this. But I think the fact that he's not slowing down, like he's still putting up seasons that could be career seasons. Like, what do you know? We could see another top 3, top 5 MVP finish. He does that every year, and it's incredible.
Before I let you go, are the Guardians, and are we kind of figuring out the recipe here? If they can find a way to win tonight, now it won't be easy. Max Fried is pitching. It would be 2 of 3 against the Yankees in New York. They also won 3 of 4 against the Tigers in Detroit. It's confounding because then you kind of slip back and they have a couple of games where it's like, man, that's not what you're looking for.
Yeah, they're a very hard team. Offense was okay. The bullpen was elite, but they were able to maintain that. And this year, it's different. Like, I think they have to work through some things and figure out, okay, how do we play our best baseball later? How do we get to that point? How do we grow and improve? And you're going to see roster changes. You're going to see guys run out of chances. You're going to see players just develop and take steps forward, and you're probably going to see some trades or something. So there's going to be change here, but it's about like answering questions, and they've been able to, for the most part, like keep their heads above water and win some games while they do that, which is an encouraging sign. Now they just have to keep that up and, get guys in place and get guys in positions to perform better.
Zack Meisel from The Athletic. Appreciate you joining us from New York, where you will cover Game 3 of that series between the Guardians and the Yankees. As always, great stuff. Thanks, Zack. Appreciate it.
You got it, Dave. Take care.
Zack Meisel, make sure you check him out. Great Guardians coverage for The Athletic. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.